All right, guys. Hey, thanks for joining me today. Welcome back to the Regenerative Ag Network. So 2 outstanding comments on the last video. D Haven Farms had one of, hey, your mileage is going to vary. You know, disclaimer, don't put a timeline. You know, your soil is going to react differently to soil health practices just because of it's your soil. It's where it's at in its own stage of health, and the environment and how you're going to manage that are all going to affect how fast your soil heals. That's why we don't put a timeline on anything. Take your time. Spend 2, 3, 4 years reducing tillage. At the same time, play with covers a little bit and then start getting more confident with the covers. One thing at a time, and just kind of baby step it and crawl this thing, and you'll be successful. 2 is Farmer Matt talked about how he lost the crop because he let the cover crop get away from him and then couldn't control it. So in our super easy system, we've got the 1 round of sprayer with off on the side, in the middle, the other side, wherever in the field you put it. You've got your little 2 or 4 acre piece. So that way, if you do have a catastrophic failure, you're just out them couple acres. That is not the end of the world. It's nothing. But then you just learn and move on. So, depending on what his goals are and what he wants to do, maybe he tries winter again, but next spring, as soon as he can get out there, kill that stuff. Burn it down, kill it, and just, go the rest of the year. So leave your comments below of what your failures are and what things you've learned over the years. Our failures with the reduced tillage was right off the bat compaction. So our soil, the university says our soil is just not good for no-till. With the clay on top of clay with some sand in there, you have an ideal concrete. You are making just beautiful concrete. So our first several years of no-till, the first couple of years of no-till was like, this is the easiest thing ever. Our 3rd year of no-till was like, 1, where did all the weeds come from? Dandelions now galore. And 2, why is this ground so hard? And so we got rid of the shank, but we need to replace the shank with something, and that something is roots, and we were not doing that. So there was nothing, because we didn't have worms. At that time, we had like a worm a square foot kind of deal. And so we needed help. Some folks from the U came up, and they did some teaching moments out in the field, and we discussed some stuff. And so the roots were there, or the conversation of needing roots to beat the compaction back. And we noticed that we weren't having any improved runoff reduction or infiltration, anything like that. And so they're like, yep, that's where the cover crops and the soil health will come in. So we started bringing in the cover crops, and at the same time we brought in strip till to kind of be the band-aid for us. So the strip till would shatter that soil. They allow us to plant. Our plant could go roots in that fluffy slot. Water would infiltrate that fluffy spot. And then in between the rows, you had last year's roots that you left intact. And then after a couple years of trying some covers, then the soil started to come around. Pretty soon all these things just started happening better. It got better. But yeah, them first couple years were just like, this is stupid. I'm going to go back to the disc ripper. The cover crop themselves, at the first several years, were just like, this is dumb because we're not getting any growth out here, and I'm scared of hurting my cash crop, because we were doing a 60-acre test plot. We weren't doing a couple acres, we were doing a whole field, so we had to be very careful. And so that's why I say just do that couple acres on the edge of your field. The opening round or 2 on a side or in the middle or the other side. That's where you're doing it. It's only a couple acres. You're out nothing on a catastrophic failure. And so we were really lacking a lot of growth out of our cover crop, because you saw all these pictures of these guys way down south, and they'd have this big wall of green. They're rolling it down, and you're just like, yeah, that's what I want every spring. The problem is they just don't grow like that here. It don't work here. you just can't have that growth. You know, they have 3 or 4 more months of growth, and that's a big difference. And they have different crops too. So with the cover crops, our first few attempts, we went in late in corn because we were scared of competing with corn, and it did nothing to the corn, and the cover crop did very poor. So then after several years, we finally got, you know, every year we get a little earlier and earlier, and the cover crop started doing something, but the corn was never harmed. So now we're to the point of once the corn's emerged, we can't put a cover crop out there to hurt it as far as what I'm seeing so far. I mean, you could intentionally come up with something, but for the most part, you're not going to do that. And the controlling of it, so like Farmer Matt, the rye was super big and he had a hard time controlling it. For us, the winter's going to control 99% of the stuff other than Italian ryegrass or some of your perennials. You know, for most of your cover crop stuff, controlling for us is a non-issue. But in his scenario, if he would have gone out early, could he have controlled it and had a good bean crop? Could he have cut it, you know, mowed it, and left it lay on the ground and control with a different chemical program, a different mixture? You know, there's a lot of stuff to learn of why you weren't able to burn it back. Too big, not enough, strong enough chemical, you know, would some crop oil have helped? Who knows? Who knows? But we'll learn from that and we'll move on. And he ended up ruining his crop. And the big thing is what are we learning each year, and how can we adapt and move on to this program? Because we're gonna have some failures. It's gonna happen. It's bound to happen. We're trying a complete new system out, and so yeah, there's my failures, guys. That was my learning curve. You guys comment below on yours. Thank you very much for watching.